Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Lightsworn deck profile. So this is a super old school deck that I really wanted to make a pure version of Lightsworn that could throw out multiple JDs in a single turn, which is absolutely crazy, and can even take advantage of the Minerva Xyz monster, which is really amazing. And this deck is a really cool nostalgic deck that's actually pretty budget, to be honest with you guys, because of the structure deck that came out a while ago and how much they've actually reprinted the Lightsworn monsters in the, time that they've been out. They've been out quite a while. They was actually originally released in 2008, and now it's 2020. About to be 2021, which is pretty crazy how old this deck actually is. So, without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because you have all those awesome rewards you guys, like in your name description for every single video, getting signed cards in the mail, or even getting to quest deck profile every single month at your Patreon along with test hands. So, without further ado, guys, let's get straight on into this. And I have to say, probably the only deck that's even more nostalgic than this playing around with is like one of the OG deck profiles, like playing with Blue Eyes, Red Eyes, Dark Magician, or playing with something like Six Samurais. But if we're talking archetypes, this and Six Samurais is probably the most nostalgic for me, because this, I remember going to sneak peeks and actually picking the deck up outside of the Judgment Dragons and everybody going nuts trying to find these. So first off, getting straight on in this, guys, we're going to go ahead and start off with 3 copies of Judgment Dragon. So this is the big boss monster of the deck, and what it does is if you have 4 or more Lightsworn monsters in your graveyard that have different names, you can special summon this card from your hand for free. It does not have a hard once per turn on it at all, which is insane. This was actually created back in Light of Destruction, before they even made once per turns, which is what's really cool about this deck. And it has the ability that you can pay 1,000 life points, destroy all the cards on the field, and then during your opponent's end, or during your end phase, that you have to send the top 4 cards of your deck to the graveyard. But that's not that big of a deal. When I actually saw this card back in the day, I was like, wow, that really sucks, because you got to send 4 cards off the top of your deck to the graveyard. I'll just play Dark Hole. But I didn't realize getting a big 3k beat stick on the field, that's pretty good. So then we play 3 copies of Wolf Lightsworn Beast. This card, if it's sent from your deck to the graveyard, can special summon itself off the top or out of the graveyard, which is pretty cool. So that's just a really good effect to be able to just instantly give you a monster on your board to be able to use for Xyz plays, Synchro plays, or any particular play that you need. We then play 3 copies of Raiden, Hand of the Lightsworn. Hand of the Lightsworn or Raiden is really good because during your main phase, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard, and during the end phase, you send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard as well, and it's really helpful to get your cards in the graveyard as quickly as possible. We then play 3 copies of Lumina, Lightsworn Summoner. Lumina comes in really helpful too because you can discard a card to special summon a Lightsworn monster from your graveyard that's level 4 or lower. I really like that effect, and she really helps out the deck a lot because you can special summon back Raiden and then go for a level 7 Synchro, or use her and Raiden with a Link Summon with something like a Wolf to be able to get you a lot of card advantage really quickly. And plus, she has the during the end phase effect that you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. We then play 2 copies of Minerva, the Lightsworn Maiden. Minerva comes in pretty helpful in this deck too because she has a really neat effect that she lets you, if she's sent to the graveyard, you send an additional card from your deck to the graveyard, and when she's normal summoned, you get to add a light dragon type monster from your deck to your hand whose level is less than or equal to the total number of Lightsworn monsters with different names in your graveyard, which is going to be a little bit difficult because you don't really play any light dragon monsters in the deck besides Judgment Dragon to be able to search out of the deck, and you don't play enough names to actually get that effect off. But she's a tuner monster, which comes in pretty handy, and playing her as a 2-of is really important in this particular deck. And fun fact, this is actually the same Minerva that is the Xyz monster. This is just when she's like, educated and like full grown. So that's really cool. And it's actually the same owl and everything, and she gets wings. Like, this is awesome. Like, I love the lore behind Lightsworns. It's just really cool. And also, she has the effect that she sends the top card of your deck to the graveyard. If she's sent to the graveyard, helps you out get your Lightsworns to the graveyard a little bit faster. We then play a single copy of Lila, Lightsworn Summoner. You can switch her to defense position. She lets you pop a spell or trap on the field. And also, if she's on the field during your end phase, you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Felice. If she's sent to the graveyard, she basically has the same effect as Wolf. She special summons her back to your side of the field. And you can tribute her to destroy a monster on the field, or target one monster on the field and destroy it. And then you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And then we play a single copy of one Twilightsworn monster because it's better than the original one. And that's a single copy of Raiko Twilightsworn Fighter. Raikou is really much better when he has a trench coat, because what this card does is if this card is normal summon or flip summon, you can banish a Lightsworn monster from your hand or grave, and then you banish a card on the field. It's really helpful to banish something on the field, and it just overall is a good card and helpful being a Lightsworn name. Yes, it is a Twilight Sworn, but it still counts as a Lightsworn, which is pretty good. And if you count the names here, we actually play 3, I believe, Lightsworn monsters in the extra deck, and then whatever names you have here, which is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 8, 9, 10. You have 10 names total in the deck because you have 3 in the extra deck: Wolf, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 names, so you have plenty of ways to actually get your Judgment Dragon out on your side of the field as quickly as possible. It's not really hard at all, especially since you have instant access to 3 names in the extra deck. It's not hard to get them out in the graveyard. So that's it for the all of the Lightsworn monsters. Let's get into the tech cards that we play in the deck as well. So for the tech cards, we're going to be playing a Performage Engine, which just about every Lightsworn deck plays, but it's really important. So you're going to be playing a single copy of Trick Clown if it's sent to the graveyard, or a Performage is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon back a Performage monster. Or if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can just target Performage monster in your graveyard and special summon it, and but its attack defense becomes 0, and you take 1,000 points of damage. Not that big of a deal, but it's still helpful to get you a level 4 monster on the field. 1 copy of Damage Juggler, you can banish from your graveyard to add a Performage monster from your deck to your hand, which is pretty good and really helpful for the deck. It can also help you protect yourself from effect damage, but usually the banish effect from the graveyard is going to be the big effect that you're going to be resolving in this deck with this card anyways. We play 2 copies of Hat Tricker. Hat Tricker is really good because if you control 2 or more monsters, you can special summon this card to your side of the field, which is the big effect that you're going to be wanting to resolve as much as possible, because you can actually summon Naturia Beast in this deck, which this card is actually a key combo piece in summoning Naturia Beast. We then play 2 copies of Destiny Hero Malicious. Destiny Hero Malicious is a really good card in this deck that you can banish a single copy of Malicious to be able to special summon a Malicious from the deck, which is really helpful. And we play a single copy of Plague Spreader Zombie because if you play Plague Spreader Zombie with this card, then you can place a copy of a card on top of your deck from your hand to be able to special summon back Plague Spreader from your graveyard, and then you can synchro it with Destiny Hero Malicious to make you a level 8 synchro monster, which is pretty helpful. Also, if you have a Destiny Hero Malicious in your hand, then you can put the Plague Spreader on the field by putting the Destiny or Malicious that's dead in the hand back on top of the deck, which is a very old school combo that you guys will see in test hands for Lightsworns very soon, but it's really helpful to be able to just put that back on top of the deck and have a card that's in your hand that's no longer dead back on top and have the Plague Spreader back on your side of the field. It helps out a lot in this deck. We then play 3 copies of the Txne Spirit Adahara. Adahara comes in super handy in this deck because this card basically says if you don't control a monster on your side of the field, then you can special summon this card from your hand, which is pretty helpful. And plus it's an Earth Tuner monster that's level 1, so you can use this and Hat Tricker to go into your copy of your Naturia Beast, which is ridiculously helpful in this deck to be able to go into Naturia Beast and just be able to go into all sorts of different plays. We then play a single copy of Chaos Dragon Levineer. Chaos Dragon Levineer is kind of like the 4th copy of Judgment Dragon in this deck, which is really helpful because you can use this card really well with your copies of, say, your light and dark monsters, because if you only use light monsters, you special summon a monster from your graveyard and defense position, which is super helpful. And if you only use dark monsters, you can banish a random card from your opponent's hand into the deck. And then if you use both light and dark, you can destroy 2 cards on the field, which is pretty good just to be able to destroy 2 cards on the field if you use both light and dark. And plus it's a 3k beat stick that comes out as a level 8. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. 3 copies of Ash Blossom comes in pretty handy because it is a tuner in the deck, and you guys will see when you get into the extra deck why playing so many tuners is actually important, and getting them into the graveyard is very important as well. But this card lets you also stop your opponent from all sorts of shenanigans, because the copies of Ash Blossom are a really good hand trap that stops your opponent from basically touching their deck at all. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells, because we play quite a few spells in this deck. So for the spells, we are going to be playing a few spells, which is going to be a single copy of Foolish Burial, which basically says, hey, you can send any card that you need from your deck to the graveyard, which is super helpful to be able to basically send any of your particular monsters at any particular time from the deck, which can get you special summons. It can get you monsters on your side of the field super easy, and it can get you all sorts of different crazy plays on your side of the field very, very quickly. And it basically helps you like snowball the rest of the deck. We then play a single copy of Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn is ridiculously helpful in this deck because you're going to mill out cards that you want to have on your side of the field very quickly in this deck, because by turn 5 in this deck, you usually mill out your entire deck. We then play 2 copies of Monster Reincarnation. Monster Reincarnation is really good in this deck because you discard a card, then you select a card in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, which is usually your copies of Judgment Dragon that you're going to be milling to the graveyard, and then bringing them back with your copies of Monster Reincarnation. We then play 3 copies of Solar Recharge. Solar Recharge is probably the best card in the entire deck outside of Judgment Dragon, because this card lets you send a Lightsworn monster from your hand to the graveyard, then you draw 2 cards and send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard. That's really good, because you're getting to send 2 to the graveyard, which is getting you 2 potential cards that might bring themselves back, like your copy of your Trick Clown, your Wolf, and your Felice all can special summon themselves when they're sent to the graveyard. You're also sending potential cards that you can activate in the graveyard, and you're getting to draw 2 off of a single discard, so it breaks you even and is a double Foolish Burial of 2 random cards, which is ridiculously good. We then play 3 copies of Charge of the Light Brigade, which is probably one of the more insane cards in the entire deck, because it lets you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, which is really good, and then you get to add a level 4 lower Lightsworn monster from your deck to your hand, so it's the Searcher of the deck, which is really good in this deck, because by sending the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, you're essentially enabling the entire deck to function. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So with the extra deck, you're going to be playing 2 copies of Minerva, the Exiled Lightsworn. This card is really good in the deck and probably one of the best cards in the entire deck. It was actually a prize card for a long time, and this deck could not even play it because it was $750 each at one point, and now she's like 5 or 10, I think. But what this card does is you can detach a material from this card and then send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, then draw cards equal to the number of Lightsworn cards sent to the graveyard by this card effect, and if this card is destroyed by battle, or if it's sent in owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, then you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, then you can destroy cards on the field up to the number of Lightsworn cards sent to the graveyard by this effect, and you can only use each effect for once per turn. So she's a really good card to be able to get you all sorts of crazy plays in your graveyard, and she's a really good basically to get another name for Judgment Dragon on your side of the field. We then play a single copy of Curious, the Lightsworn Domain. This card is really good because what this card does is if it's destroyed by battle or leaves you open as a opponent's card effect, then you can target a card on the field or target a card in the graveyard and add it to your hand. Any card in the graveyard. It can be Monster Reborn, Judgment Dragon, Charge of the Light Brigade, Solar Recharge, any good card that you need, this card can get it back. Also, when it's Link Summon, you can send a card from your hand or send a card from your deck to the graveyard. And if a card is sent from the deck to the graveyard, you can send 3 cards from your deck to the graveyard as well, which is a really good effect. We then play, for the reason that we were playing so many tuners in the deck, you're playing a single copy of Judgment, the Dragon of Heaven. So this card is a really good card, actually. I really didn't like this card to begin with when it came out, but it's kind of grown on me because it's kind of like a utility card in a pure Lightsworn deck, because if you synchro summon this card, the materials must be the same attributes, and then once per turn, if you have 4 more tuners with different names in your graveyard and you control the synchro summon card, you can pay half your life, destroy all the cards on the field, and also you cannot special summon monsters except for dragon monsters, and then once per turn during the end phase you banish 4 cards off the top of your deck. So it's a good card because it's essentially a live Judgment Dragon at all times, which is why I like this card as a one-of, and plus it goes with the theme of the Lightsworn monsters, which is why I like playing it as a one-of in the extra deck. It's not going to hurt anything to play one, and it's really fun to actually throw it out when you can actually summon it, because it's really a good, decent card to summon. And it was actually one of the last, one of the very, very last Shonen Jump cards that they ever released too. So that's really cool too. We then play a single copy of Michael the Arc Lightsworn. Michael the Arc Lightsworn lets you pay 1,000 life points, and then you can target it on the field and banish it. We play a single copy of Trishula because you ripping 3 cards off your opponent is really fun. Chaos Ruler, the Chasmatic Magical Dragon. This card's really good. It's basically a Lightsworn card that lets you excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, and then you get to add a light or dark monster from your to your hand, which is really good. And you can banish a light or dark card, or banish a light and dark card from your graveyard if this card's in the graveyard and special summon it, but you banish it when it leaves the field. You make this card all the time in this deck. This card is ridiculously good in the deck. You play a single copy of Beals because it's a good defensive card to put on your side of the field to be able to kind of lock it down if your opponent's trying to OTK you or you're trying to go in with this card. It's very sword and shieldish with Beals. We play a single copy of F.A. Dawn Dragster because it gives you additional negates on your side of the field. One copy of Naturia Beast because Naturia Beast is good at shutting down pendulums and a lot of different decks that play spells. One copy of Borrelsaur because you can put a bunch of monsters on field with different names very quickly in this deck. Then it helps you OTK your opponent. One copy of Appaloosa. Appaloosa is really good in the deck too because you can really easily put 4 monsters on the field with different names. Some of this card gets you 4 negates on the field. One copy of Needle Fiber. I just play Needle Fiber in here because it helps you get your copy of Plague Spreader and your other monsters from the main deck that are tuners on the field as quickly as possible. Abyss Dweller because it shuts down graveyards really easily. It's easy to make rank 4s in this deck. And then single copy of number 60 because it can double the attack of a monster, let you draw 2 and discard 1. Or bring back a monster from the graveyard to your side of the field and act like a monster reborn. But you do have downsides to the card, like skipping your next main phase, skipping your next draw phase, or skipping your next battle phase. It depends on which one you activate, which is why it's really good. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really cool deck to play around with, especially playing a pure variant like this is just really cool because it's very old school playing pure Lightsworns, and I would consider it very pure because you're just playing tech monsters in the deck because you can't play a 100%, I mean, you can, but it's not very good to play a 100% pure deck, but you're basically playing tech monsters in the deck, and then focusing solely on the cards like Judgment Dragon and Minerva the Exiled Lightsworn. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell near so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.